If you've ever lived in a neighborhood with a homeowners association, you know there's always that one person who takes their role way too seriously. They start with passive-aggressive emails about garbage can placement and graduate to issuing fines for crimes against aesthetic harmony, like having the audacity to paint your door a shade too bold for their fragile sensibilities. In my case, that person was Linda Shoemaker. Linda was the self-appointed queen of Oak Hollow Estates, a middle-aged woman with an overblown sense of importance and a clipboard permanently fused to her hand. If power were a drug, she was a full-blown addict. She wasn't just the HOA president, she was its judge, jury, and executioner. The bylaws weren't guidelines, they were commandments. And Linda? She was Moses, delivering them from the mountain. Should have known she'd be trouble from the moment she showed up on my porch that Tuesday morning, smiling like a Stepford wife, but with eyes that had the warmth of a snake in the sun. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she chirped, voice dripping, with fake sweetness. "I couldn't help but notice that you have an unapproved bird feeder in your yard." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She motioned to the tiny wooden bird feeder hanging from the oak tree in my front yard. "A bird feeder. For birds. Page 32, subsection C," she recited, as if she had the HOA handbook burned into her memory. "No exterior decor that deviates from the established neighborhood aesthetic." I stared at her. "It's a bird feeder." She nodded, as if explaining calculus. "To a toddler. Yes, and unfortunately it disrupts the uniformity of the landscape." I looked around at my neighbors' houses. Identical driveways, identical beige paint jobs, identical lawns trimmed to HOA-approved specifications. But my bird feeder was the real threat to the community's delicate ecosystem? "Linda," I said, forcing a smile, "with all due respect, this seems a little ridiculous." Her expression hardened. "You'll need to remove it within 24 hours, or you'll be fined." Then she pivoted on her heels and strode off like a Terminator in capri pants, and that was where it began. I shrugged it off at first. Sure, the HOA was annoying, but I could live without a bird feeder. No big deal, right? Wrong, because Linda was just getting started. The next morning, I got a citation for improper mailbox height. Then another for parking my car slightly too far from the curb. A few days later, I received an official warning about my grass being 0.75 inches taller than HOA regulations allowed. Then came the fine for leaving my trash cans out too long, by exactly 7 minutes. It wasn't just me either. My neighbor Paul got slapped with a $50 penalty for having a basketball hoop in his driveway. The Wilsons were fined for their garden gnome being too whimsical. Even old Mrs. Hendricks, who'd lived here for 20 years, got a warning because her porch light bulbs weren't the correct wattage. Linda was on a power trip, and no one was safe. But I wasn't about to roll over, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I started pushing back. It began with small things. I double-checked every single bylaw and started documenting her nonsense. When she sent me another citation, this time for a potted plant that was allegedly too large, I sent back a formal request for measurement criteria. Then I took it a step further. I filed an appeal for every fine she threw my way. I forced her to schedule official inspections for infractions like my garden hose being coiled incorrectly. I was annoying, petty, unrelenting, and Linda hated it. One morning, I woke up to find a boot on my car, a bright yellow heavy-duty wheel boot locked in place, with an official-looking notice stuck to my windshield. Vehicle immobilized due to repeated HOA violations. Contact HOA President Linda Shoemaker to resolve. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, wondering if I'd suffered a stroke in my sleep. The HOA didn't have the authority to boot cars. They weren't the city, they weren't the police. They were just a bunch of suburban control freaks with too much time on their hands, and Linda had finally overplayed her hand. I pulled out my phone and started filming. "Hey everyone," I said, panning over the unauthorized boot clamped to my wheel. "So apparently, our beloved HOA president thinks she's above the law now." I posted the video in the Oak Hollow Community Facebook group. Within an hour, it had exploded. Neighbors chimed in, sharing their own horror stories. Linda had been terrorizing people for years. There were fines for door wreaths, threats over unapproved patio furniture, and even an incident where she allegedly banned a lemonade stand because it wasn't in line with the HOA's business regulations. But the boot? That was different. That wasn't just annoying. It was illegal. And now, I had proof. Just when I thought Linda couldn't possibly go any further, she did. Because that afternoon, I got an email. Subject: Notice of Lion Against Property. Skimmed the message, my stomach sinking. Linda wasn't just trying to fine me. She was trying to put a lien on my house for failure to comply with HOA mandates. That's when I realized this wasn't just a power trip anymore. This was war, and I wasn't about to lose. I sat there staring at my phone, rereading the email over and over, hoping I had somehow misinterpreted it. But no. Linda Shoemaker had officially escalated from garden-variety suburban dictator to full-fledged warlord. She was trying to put a lien on my house, because of some fabricated HOA violations. I could almost hear her voice in my head, smug and self-satisfied. Let's see you fight this one, Mr. Carter. Fine, Linda. Game on. First, I did what any reasonable person would do. I called the number listed on the email, expecting to reach some HOA legal representative. Instead, it went straight to Linda's personal voicemail. Hi, you've reached Linda Shoemaker, President of the Oak Hollow Estates Homeowners Association. If this is regarding an HOA concern, please refer to the handbook before contacting me. If this is about an enforcement action, know that all decisions are final. Have a blessed day. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Final? She thought she could just declare things final? Like some kind of neighborhood emperor? I wasn't having it. I did some quick research and confirmed what I already suspected. An HOA can't just slap a lien on your property over arbitrary fines. There were legal processes involved, and from what I could tell, Linda was skipping a lot of steps. I needed leverage, so I dug deeper. I scoured the Oak Hollow HOA bylaws, looking for anything I could use against her. I found some contradictions. Some rules she was enforcing weren't even properly ratified. But I needed more. Then I started asking around. That's when I met Jason Martinez, a former HOA board member who had resigned 2 years ago under mysterious circumstances. Turns out they weren't so mysterious. He had quit after clashing with Linda. She was power-hungry, man, he told me, shaking his head. Started making executive decisions without votes, overriding policies, even using HOA funds for things she wasn't supposed to. That got my attention. Like what? Jason hesitated, glancing around before lowering his voice. There was this whole situation with the neighborhood security cameras. The HOA budget had a chunk set aside for them, but Linda pushed through some shady vendor deal. Overpriced contract, missing invoices. The works. Bingo. Do you still have any of that paperwork? I asked. Jason nodded. Yeah, I kept copies, just in case. I had just hit gold, but Linda wasn't done with me yet. The next morning, I walked outside to find a certified letter taped to my front door. It was from the HOA. Final warning. Failure to comply per. HOA regulations. Continued defiance will result in escalated enforcement actions, including legal recourse. Escalated. Enforcement actions? What the hell was that supposed to mean? And then I saw it. My car was gone. At first, I thought it had been stolen. But no, my driveway wasn't empty. There was a sign planted in the grass. Vehicle towed for non-compliance with HOA policy. Contact HOA president to resolve. Linda had towed my damn car. This was beyond insane. This was criminal. I stormed over to her house, my pulse pounding in my ears. She answered the door with a serene smile, as if she had just finished a yoga session, instead of illegally seizing my vehicle. Mister, "Carter," she said smoothly, "is there something I can help you with?" "Where is my car?" She gave a tiny shrug, the kind designed to make someone's blood pressure spike. "Your vehicle was found in repeated violation of the HOA's street parking policy." "That's bull," I snapped. "It was parked in my driveway." She sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one. "Your driveway has a visible oil stain, which violates community standards for property upkeep." I laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "So, you had my car towed, over an oil stain?" She tilted her head, all faux sympathy. "Rules are rules, Mr. Carter." That was it. I wasn't just going to fight back, I was going to end her. I walked away before I said something that would get me arrested. But my mind was already spinning with a plan. Step 1. Expose Linda. Jason sent over the financial documents, and I combed through them, highlighting every inconsistency, every missing invoice, every suspicious expense. Then, I found something even worse, a misappropriation of HOA funds. Linda had been using HOA money to pay for her own home repairs. Step 2. Rally the neighborhood. I started knocking on doors, showing people proof of Linda's shady behavior. Turns out, a lot of people had been quietly suffering under her reign of terror. By the end of the night, I had dozens of signatures demanding a community meeting. Step 3. Set the trap. I needed one final push to make sure Linda buried herself. So I sent her an email. Subject: Urgent. HOA financial concerns. Hi, Linda. I've recently come across some unsettling financial records regarding HOA expenditures. I'd love to discuss this at the next board meeting. Please advise on the best time to do so. Regards, Carter, she responded within the hour. Mr. Carter, any concerns you have should be directed privately to the HOA board, not discussed publicly. I suggest you drop this matter before it becomes a problem for you. Best, Linda Shoemaker, President, Oak Hollow. HOA. A problem for me? She had just put her threat in writing. I smiled. She had no idea what was coming. And just when I thought I had everything lined up, something unexpected happened. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a security alert. I checked the camera feed. And there, she was, Linda, standing in my driveway, holding a paint can. I watched, stunned, as she walked up to my garage door and started painting over my house number. It wasn't just bizarre, it was illegal. I hit record, because this was checkmate. Linda Shoemaker, self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, was standing in my driveway in the middle of the night, illegally defacing my property like some kind of deranged suburban Banksy. I watched through the camera feed as she dipped her brush back into the gallon of beige paint, an exact match for our HOA-approved exterior color, because of course it was, and sloppily covered my house number. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. She was trying to make my address disappear. Without a visible house number, I wouldn't receive official HOA notices. If I didn't receive them, I couldn't respond. If I didn't respond, I'd be deemed non-compliant. And if I was non-compliant long enough, the HOA could try to foreclose on my home. This wasn't just petty vengeance anymore. This was insanity. I threw open the front door. "Hey, Linda!" I shouted. She froze, paintbrush mid-stroke, her face a perfect mix of shock and guilt. There was a long, heavy pause. Then she dropped the brush, turned on her heel, and sprinted down my driveway. It would have been almost comical, this middle-aged HOA dictator-turned-criminal running like a raccoon caught in the trash, if it wasn't so unhinged. But I wasn't about to let her escape. I took off after her barefoot, adrenaline roaring through me. She cut through my yard, her loafers kicking up patches of my allegedly non-compliant grass. She made it halfway down the street before realizing she had nowhere to go. She had literally parked her car in my driveway. I skidded to a stop just as she turned back to me, chest heaving, her face flushed with rage. "This is harassment, Mr. Carter," she panted. "I'll be filing a police report." I held up my still recording phone. "Oh, I think you should definitely call the police, Linda," I said, grinning. "But something tells me they'll be a bit more interested in why you were vandalizing my property at 2 in the morning. Her expression twisted. "You have no proof." I flipped my phone screen to show the live security feed. Clear as day. There she was, painting over my house number like some kind of HOA gremlin. Her eyes widened. I could see the exact moment she realized she was screwed, and then the flashing red and blue lights appeared. Apparently, one of my neighbors had seen the commotion and called the cops. I turned just in time to see a squad car roll up to the curb. 2 officers stepped out, their eyes shifting between me, Linda, and the dripping paint still sitting in my driveway. "Is there a problem here?" one of them asked. I opened my mouth to respond, but Linda, in a moment of pure delusion, threw up her hands and shouted, "Yes! This man is harassing me!" Both officers turned to me. I took a slow breath, then calmly held up my phone. "Actually," I said, "I think you'll want to see this." I hit play, and as the footage of Linda vandalizing my house played in crisp 1080p clarity, I saw something beautiful happen. For the first time in my entire life, Linda Shoemaker, Oak Hollow HOA's unshakable tyrant, lost her composure. She stammered. She backpedaled. She tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that she was helping me repaint, that she was just following HOA guidelines. But the officers weren't buying it. And then, one of them hit her with the magic words, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us." The second officer turned to me. "You want to press charges?" I smiled. "Oh, absolutely." And just like that, Linda Shoemaker was led away in handcuffs. But that wasn't the end. Oh no. Because the next morning, the entire neighborhood knew. Word spread fast. My video had already been uploaded to the Oak Hollow community Facebook page, and by noon, it had gone viral within our HOA. People were furious. See, Linda had spent years abusing her power, nickel and diming. Everyone with petty fines, enforcing made-up rules, and making people miserable. But now, everyone saw her for what she really was. And when we held an emergency HOA meeting later that week, she was voted out, unanimously. The best part? The board immediately launched an internal audit, and all of Linda's shady financial dealings came to light. The missing HOA funds, the fraudulent invoices, it was all laid out in black and white. By the end of the month, Linda wasn't just out of a job. She was facing legal action for embezzlement. Poetic justice. But the real cherry on top? Remember my car? Turns out the tow company had no official HOA authorization to take it. Since Linda had illegally ordered the tow, I was able to sue the HOA for damages, and I won. The payout? Enough to repaint my entire house. And guess what color I picked? Bright. Flaming. Red. Because if I was going to be a thorn in the HOA's side, I might as well look the part. And Linda? Well, last I heard, she moved out of Oak Hollow. Apparently she tried pulling the same HOA power moves in her new neighborhood. Didn't go well for her. Turns out her new HOA president, a retired federal judge, hopes she enjoys paying those fines.